Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Cahill and welcome back to my channel. Today the day has finally arrived. It is time for me to officially start my rereads for Abingdon House, the series. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this for ages. For those of you who don't know, I have been busy getting the entirety of my life sucked out of me by writing a middle grade magical realism series called the Abingdon House series. I wrote book 1 during NaNoWriMo in 2020, and in 2021 I wrote the subsequent 4 books of the series, with the thought of pulling a Kate Kavanagh and writing the entire series before I go back and rewrite the different books so everything is coherent, everything makes sense. Things I need to foreshadow for books 4 and 5 are there planted already within books 2 and 3, etc, etc. You know the drill. 2022 is all about rewriting everything I have already written. Abingdon House is one of those things. I'm so excited to finally sit down and get started with revising this series. I have a lot to do, but it's going to be fun. I sort of have a plan of how I'm going to do this. I am initially obviously going to reread the entire series, as in books 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, which is what we're doing today. I'm going to be making notes on things about the plot that I do like, things about the plot that I don't like, or things I want to take out. Maybe I can write down things that I want to include during the next draft, because obviously I'm going to need to include a lot of words in order to get books 2 to 5 up to the same level as book 1 is in terms of quality and length. Once I've done my rereads and I have all of my notes, I can then use those notes and then re-outline the entire series as a whole to make sure that the series plot makes sense. And then once I've done that, I can go back individually through books 2, 3, 4 and 5 and then re-outline those specific plots, and then I can start rewriting with book 2. So it's going to be a long road in order for me to even start physically rewriting these books. I'm not including book 1 in all of this because book 1 is currently quite strong, because I have already revised that once and a half. So book 1 is fine. Book 1 is settled in its plot because it's the first in the series. It doesn't contain a lot of things that matter for the rest of the series and the series plot as a whole, obviously because I want it to seem sort of like a standalone novel, which can then go into the rest of the books. But we've got a lot of work to do. I have my notebook all set up here in order to put in all of the notes that I am going to be taking. I have my tea, I have some chocolates somewhere on my desk. Here they are. And we are going to get started. I don't need to technically read book 1 because I know what book 1 entails, but in order for me to get a full feel of the entire series as a whole, we're going to start with book 1 and we're going to go from there. We have books 1 and 2 on Google Docs, and then we have books 3, 4 and 5 still over on Scriveners. We're going to start, if I can get there, with book 1. I'm very interested to see if I still feel inspired and motivated while reading book 1, or if it's lost a little bit of its magic over the past year or so. I'm going to get such book fatigue after this. So 4 hours, 3 cups of tea and an entire pack of chocolate later, I am finally done reading book 1 of Abingdon House. I didn't make many notes. I didn't need to make many notes. There are a couple of bits in there which I jotted down in regards to what the characterizations were for the characters at the beginning of the book. I have jotted down a couple of things which I could expand upon in future books in regards to the plot issues and that the houses were having in book 1, which I don't touch upon again for the rest of the series. A book of secrets that I sort of touch upon, which I don't mention again in the series. So yeah, we're done with that. We're moving on to book 2 now. The bad book, which I'm not looking forward to, but we're going to see how many notes we end up making for that and what I need to change. So Woohoo! Let's go. Ooh, this book is worse than I thought. I'm barely 18 pages in and I'm just like, the entire time. It's so bad. Oh my god. I have to remember that this is a zero draft. That is why nothing makes sense, and that is why everything is happening so quickly. It is a zero draft. This needs like 40,000 more words in it to make a decent novel, but I'm just... This is weird. This is weird. This is weird how I did this. This doesn't make sense. I don't like this. It's going to be a long read. So I'm currently 97 pages in Abingdon number 2. It is 118 pages long in total. We're on chapter 19 out of 26. It's so bad. It's so much worse than I remember. I can count on one hand the amount of interesting things that has happened in this novel. And it's one and a half things. I don't even see the point of finishing the book because it's gonna need a complete and utter overhaul. I can't keep 80% of it. 80% of it is going to be cut and changed and rewritten. So there's a lot of things which start to happen in book 2 in regards to character arcs, which will continue on through book 5. So those are the things I can keep. There's bits of character that can be improved and more detail added throughout book 2, you know, conflicts that the main characters have with each other, which is absolutely fine. That's not the issue. The issue is I have not very well thought out the plot of the book, and I have not very well thought out and mixed the subplots of the books to the main plot. So the point of Abingdon number 2 is magical foundations of Abingdon House are failing and Hazel has to fix the issue. That is her aim throughout the entire book. And she is also learning about the different threads of magic that she has to pick from when she turns 14 years old for the rest of the book. And so those are the two main things I need to focus on. But we have just so many conversations that aren't important and so many things which are supposed to be related to each other, which are not related to each other. And this whole issue with the magic of Abingdon House failing, and thus the house is, you know, cracks are forming in the house, similar to Encanto, except it happens over a longer period of time rather than just the one day, which is one of the issues I was having with the timeline. It's such a serious issue, yet the story spans 6 months. It just doesn't feel like it should fit with such a long time frame. So I might have to shorten the time frame for that to make it more serious and urgent. But apart from that, we're 18 chapters in. We've had like one sort of major scene of interest, and we've had sort of a half-second major scene of interest, which is related to another subplot, which is a issue that Hazel has to sort out, because I'm trying to get this whole, she's being pulled in so many different directions, and she's 13 years old and it's all overwhelming, and she's got so many important things that she needs to focus on. How is she supposed to focus on everything and solve everything all at once by herself? That particular involves werewolves. It doesn't work, it doesn't fit, because we don't focus on it, and it doesn't cause any issues apart from, oh, it's just something else that Hazel has to focus on. So it really is a very bad attempt at doing what I wanted to do, which was this whole exploration into the fact that the magic is failing, and Hazel thinks it's her fault because she's the new head of Abingdon House and she's being pulled in all these different directions. It's not executed well. So I'm going to very much have to like get rid of the majority of this book and rework it into a more coherent plot, which I'm not looking forward to because that's going to be so much work. I now have seven more chapters to read for book 2. I've already got like half a page of notes of things that I need to look at and change, which probably won't even matter that much if I'm not going to use anything related to these notes in the new version. We've read this, we'll see how it goes and how I feel about it. Can't get much worse, right? Chapter 24, chapter 25 and chapter 26. On to book 3. It is the next day. I am tired. I am not looking forward to more reading and going through the terribleness that is all of these zero drafts, but I have to get it done, so I'm gonna get it done. As we discovered yesterday, book 2 is basically useless in terms of anything regarding plot for the series. We had a couple of nice seeds for character development, but apart from that, useless, pointless, doesn't need to be there. So I'm hoping that book number 3 is going to be a little bit different from what I remember. And again, I have not read this book since, when did I write book 3? July of 2021. So from what I remember, we do sort of see a lot more of the first grains of the villain for the series. I didn't realise that they weren't in book 2 until basically like the end of book 2, and really like you don't even know that they're there. But this is where you see the first sort of hints, and this is the first time that Hazel and her friends really start to, not that they know that it's the villain causing all the issues at the end, but it's the villain of the story who happens to be everywhere else. So yeah, book 3 is the first time we see the villain, and we sort of get hints at the bigger mystery that is their plan, which is what Hazel is going to focus on over the next couple of books. Definitely needs to appear earlier than book 3. Oh, it's not good. So while I remember the main plot of book 3, I don't remember what happens in regards to the overall plot for book 3. I think they're sort of very tangled together, and I don't know if there's anything else plot-wise that Hazel is focusing on while the bigger plot is going on. Honestly can't remember, but we're gonna find out. Add to all of the work that I need to do, but it's okay, it's fine. I have my tea. It is half gone, but we still have some, so it's fine. And let me see if I can get book 3 read, and maybe perhaps also start book 4 by the time I have to go to work this evening. That is the plan. So let's go. It's a zero draft, it's a zero draft, it's a zero draft, it is just a zero draft. I'm getting through book 3 quite quickly, but if I do recall, book 3 is the shortest at only 36,000 words, so I'm not surprised that I'm going through it quite quickly. We are on scene 14 now, because Abingdon book 3 was the first Abingdon House book that I used my new outlining method with, which was picking random scenes out of a box. and everything is just happening so quickly, and we're not spending enough time with everything that is going on. But it's a 0 draft. We do need to add like 45,000 words to this manuscript to make it proper. So I'm trying to push aside that, oh my god, this is, what have I written, and focusing on, it's a 0 draft, it's not supposed to be good. Focus on the plot issues that you have in this book. So far I don't have a lot. The main plot is ticking along fine. There are moments where we are getting bits and pieces for Hazel to follow in order to figure out the issue. Then they're forgotten about and I've not put them back in. So there's things I can sort out there. I have uncovered 3 subplots in the book which will relate to each other in the end, but right now where we are in the book, they're all seen as 3 different issues to have. They are all technically the same issue. One of them is sort of a rehash of a subplot that I used in book 2, which I'm not quite sure about. It's not quite a rehash, but it's a subplot involving potions. And I'm like, well, I just had a subplot involving potions in book 2, so why do I then need a subplot involving potions again in book 3? Doesn't make sense. They're different potions, but it's just weird that potions are involved in some way as an issue that has to be solved in both of the books. So I'm gonna have to look at that and see what I can do about it. Yeah, there's also a lot of research going on in Abingdon House. It's a very big research series. They do a lot of research in book 1 in order to figure stuff out. They do a lot of research in book 2 in order to figure stuff out. They're doing research now in book 3 to figure stuff out. And it's like, so much research. There's so many times where Hazel has to go to her library to look at books, to try and read stuff, to figure stuff out. And it's like, how many more times do you need to go to the library? And it sort of makes sense in world because there's a lot of magical issues that she needs to sort out, and you know, not everyone knows these issues, so she's gonna have to research in order to figure out what to do. But there's just so much of it, and I don't know how to make it so they don't need to research, but then I don't want all the characters to just know what's going on. Or she can talk to a random person and find out what's going on. Like, I want her to put in the hard work for it, but then the hard work is research. It's like, but it's okay. It's also very slow. Nothing interesting has happened, really, and we're 14 scenes in. I think we've had one sort of like action-y scene in these 14 scenes. And obviously bits and pieces of the subplot coming through, but that's a lot of Hazel being told about these issues and the subplots, and then not really having anything physically to deal with them until later in the book, instead of her coming across these issues physically and then learning about them in an interesting way. It's always, oh, by the way, this has happened. It's happened before, and it's happened again. And she's just being told that it's going on rather than experiencing it, which I think is slowing the book down a little bit. And there's just a lot of talking. There's a lot of talking instead of doing. I think in the series as a whole, there is a lot of talking instead of doing stuff. But I think that's mostly because of how I've set the series up. A lot of it is Hazel at Abingdon House, and obviously she has duties to deal with as the head of Abingdon House. And there's a lot of things that Hazel has to deal with, so she spends a lot of time at Abingdon House. She can't just go off and do stuff whenever she wants to because she has other priorities and responsibilities. So hence all the research and doing things the right way. And it's not like she doesn't go off on her own or sneak out to do something. But yeah, it's a lot of conversations and not a lot of doing and being active. A lot of it is stuff happens to her, and then based on what has happened to her, it pushes her in a different direction where something else happens to her, or she finds out about something which then pushes her in a different direction, rather than her actively going out to discover something and finding the next way to go on her own. So I'm not sure about the plot at the moment, at least in the beginning. Does it work? Does it not work? I think we'll find out as we read a little bit further, but I'll definitely be getting on to book 4 at some point today, seeing as I'm almost done halfway through with book 3 as it is. So yeah, my tea's gone cold, so I'm going to get some more tea. I might try and find a snack, maybe a cheese string, maybe some Cinnabon, and then we're going to get back with the rest of book number 3 and see how worse it can get from here. I just found a 4th subplot, which I forgot completely that I had in here, which isn't much of a subplot, but it's brought up enough times to sort of be an issue, which again is related to the other 3 subplots, but it seems like it's a separate one at the moment. So really, book 3 was me desperately trying to have Hazel pulled into so many different directions. She doesn't know how to cope, and I'm not doing it very well. These are my notes. This is my snack. This is the tea mug I have switched to. This is what I'm currently listening to. Yes, it is the Encanto soundtrack. And we are ready to get back to work. Okay, so I'm busy reading scene 25 of number 3. This is what I get for not going back and reading the previous book before I started the next one, because in book 4, one of the main plots in it is the fact that half dragons, which is a species, are getting attacked. So Hazel sort of like gathers them all up, takes them to a safe house to keep them safe, because she has a friend who's a half dragon and doesn't want him to get hurt. Reading book 3, there's a moment here where Hazel's like, oh, take all the half dragons to the safe house because I don't want them to get hurt with what's going on. So I have unintentionally once again repeated a plot point from one book to another book. I suck at outlining so much. Okay, we have reached the end of book number 3 of Abingdon House, which is also a hot mess, but it's less of a mess than book 2 at least. So there is that. It gets better after the midpoint. There's a good couple of scenes in there. Everything is figured out and sorted out right at the very end of the book, instead of being sorted out throughout the entirety of the book, which is annoying. There's a couple of bits which don't quite make sense in regards to the plot or what they figure out. Things that I wrote in because they needed to happen and then they're not explained at all whatsoever. While there was not enough going on in book 2 to make it interesting, there is too much going on in book 3. So I somehow need to either move some of the mystery from book 3 into book 2, or I need to somehow streamline what happens in book 3 in order to make it seem like there's not way too much stuff going on to focus on, because there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subplots which all seem like they're separate subplots, but in reality they are all related to the one main plot. But it's too much. It's too much going on at once. I feel like with the amount of things that are going on, book 3 can very easily, or with great difficulty, be turned into something similar to Stranger Things season 3, where you had the 3 different groups of people, each sort of like investigating their own mystery, and then eventually finding out that all three of these mysteries belong to the same mystery, which is the big issue. I feel like I could do something similar with book 3. Obviously, it would be one group of persons, which is Hazel and her friends, investigating each 3 of these different things which are going on, and then realizing through investigation and clues and discoveries that they are all in fact related and to this one big thing. I think that might have been what I was going for. Doesn't quite work because these subplots are sort of mentioned a couple of times, and then I drop the subplot, and then I bring up the next subplot, and then that's like a focus for like a scene or 2, and then I drop that one, and then I come back up with the next subplot. So it's like, yeah, but it's got promise. I don't have to do much work in regards to changing the plot, mostly just in regards to having Hazel be more active in regards to everything that is going on, rather than being told everything is going on until she gets the big clue that will help her out, and then she's active, just to make her a bit more active throughout the entire thing. So but it's okay. It's okay. We have improved since book 2. Hopefully book 4 will improve a little bit over book 3 in regards to the plot I have, because everything's sort of coming together now that we're getting closer to the end, and then hopefully then book 5 will be a bit more, but who knows. I'm a little bit worried about book 4 because book 4 is the one that I wrote in 3 days. But we're not going to know until we actually read it. So what I'm going to do is break for lunch and then start at least with book 4. It is one of the longer books. I think it's 48,000 words. I don't know where all my notes have gone now. In my pile of books that is technically by TBR. It's not, it's shorter than book 2. 40,000 words. Okay. That's fine. Should take me about as long to read as book number 3 did, which was about an hour and a half in the end. But this is not as fun as I assumed it would be. But that's okay, because the fun part is yet to come, and that is trying to fix everything. And we're back. It has been a day, maybe. I don't remember the day that I started reading the Abingdon House books. So time has no meaning. I didn't read on Saturday. I think it must have been Friday then. I sort of started book 4 and then promptly, either through tiredness or massive lack of motivation, decided to stop reading quite early in the afternoon, to not read anymore because I couldn't do it. I need to finish book 4 and book 5, which are both on the longer side. So we are currently on scene 9 of book 4. We have just started act 2, and I have the feeling that there's going to be a lot of things which happen in this book as a way for me to insert something interesting and actiony that are linked to the plot, because I didn't have anything else to write in that time. I feel like there's going to be a lot of things in this book that do that. We have a scene now where Hazel and her friends are trying to help out the octopus people who are having some issues with the raven people, and like it's basically come out of nowhere. This sort of, within the book at least, it's this sort of like altercation, this fight between them has sort of come out of nowhere, and I don't think it's mentioned again in the book. It's basically me going, oh, I need something interesting to happen. Oh, I have an octopus person character, and we know through research that, you know, they have animosity with the raven people who disappeared according to book 3, but they're somehow back now. So something interesting could happen. And then I was just like, oh, why am I putting this in here? Oh, because it can relate to the plot they're trying to figure, but it doesn't really. I could make it very easily. There's bits in there which I can obviously expand and pull back through to books 2 and 3 and then culminate in 4. So it's not just suddenly inserted there for no apparent reason whatsoever. But at this point in time, it's just been inserted in there for no apparent reason whatsoever. Oh, this is going to be horrible. Right, okay. I'm going to get some tea. I'm going to snuggle up with my Minnie Mouse Snooty, I think it's called. I don't know. And we are going to get to work with book number 4. Or we're going to continue our work with book number 4. Okay, I think I just found the root of the plot hole that I knew I was writing in book 5 of Abingdon House. So at the end of book 5, or throughout book 5, Hazel and her friends have a plan to stop the villain, and it involves sort of finding something that will stop people from being able to use magic. But luckily for them, they have something else that they're trying to do, which can form a potion which they can take so the magic cancelling effect does not affect them and they are still able to use magic. Now in book 5, as I was writing it, I realised that something didn't quite make sense, because in book 3 the villain is after a creature which can cancel the effect of magic, and they were planning to use that in their future plans. And I was like, okay, so the villain is looking and has found a creature who can cancel the ability for other people to use magic, but somehow along the line I got things confused, and now the villain is not trying to cancel magic, but Hazel is trying to cancel magic to stop the villain. And I'm like, what have I done? And why am I, what doesn't make sense anymore? It probably doesn't make sense as I'm trying to explain it, but there was an issue there with what I was trying to do for the plot. Book 4, which is where they find this item, which I was just like, oh, it, you know, I don't even remember what it was supposed to do now. It's supposed to counteract the magic cancelling ability. So this here is where I was incorrect, because in book 5 the properties of this water are different than what I originally stated they were. So this is the source of my issue right here for book 5. I found it. I realised what I did wrong. So now I know sort of how I need to fix it. So yay for that. Everything that happens in this book is very coincidental. Like, they need to figure something out, but coincidentally it's in this book, or coincidentally some magic happens and what they're looking for just appears, so they don't have to do any hard work. You can really see how well I've written it in scenes, like the scenes don't connect to each other properly, and where it's a 0 draft, the scene ends really weirdly. You don't have the reaction or, you know, the epilogue to certain scenes. Like, clearly something else should happen between this scene and the next scene, but it just doesn't happen. Like, you don't see the fallout, you don't see the consequences, you don't see the what's the word? Words. You don't see the aftermath of the scene that happens. And right now I'm on scene 26, so we are very close to the end now. We're about 12.
We have exciting news. Holly has born 2 babies.
We are 12 scenes away from the end now, and it seems that everything that is happening so quickly, and all of the discoveries that need to be made in order for the ending to make sense are happening really, really quickly, like within the scenes of each other, because I haven't done any work in the beginning. and it's all happening now at the end. So I can get everything in place for the ending to happen and to make sense, and then to go into book 5. So it is now Monday. It has been 5 days since I started rereading the Abingdon House series, and I still have not finished. I had high hopes that I would get done in 3 days, because I had planned to have the entire read done, and you know, editing it yesterday on Sunday. That did not happen. I read book 4 and decided I did not want to go straight to book 5, because I was just like, I can't do that to myself. I can't do it. I won't do it. It's not fair to me or my brain to submit it to such horribleness. But alas, it's something I need to get done, because I do have a lot of work to do, and I can't do the work I need to do until I do all the reading for it that I need to do. So we are here. We are starting book 5 of Abingdon House. I wrote this in November 2021. It is 58,000-ish words long. I don't quite know what to expect. Terribleness, I guess, for some of it. Some of it is going to be okay, I think. I remember really liking the first chapter, or the first scene that I wrote for it anyway. I remember disliking the ending that I wrote for it completely, like the final scene. I had no idea, and I still have no idea, how I want to end the series. So that's just like, oh yay, and family and stuff, like it's not good. And I like the sort of 2-part quest that I had in the book, despite the fact that it is a massive plot hole somehow based on what I've written in book 4, which is fine. The plot is interesting enough, at least, and you know, it is the longest book. I don't know how much of it I'm gonna have to get rid of, at least not the first half of the book. We'll put it that way. The first half of the book should be fine. It's the latter half which is mostly linked to the rest of the books in the series, in regards to the antagonist, the villain, and what they're planning. So obviously what I changed from books 2, 3 and 4 is going to massively affect how the end of the book works, but it should not affect the beginning of the book, because the beginning of the book is necessary. Actually no, the beginning of the book is necessary for them to do what is in the second half of the book in regards to the potion. And the potion in book 5 is what they're working on in order to stop the effect of no magic for Hazel, so she still has her magic when no one else has their magic. And the point of the potion that they're making is to let her keep her magic when there is no magic for everyone else, because that's the villain's plan. But in book 5 it's Hazel's plan. It should work, it should fit. It's just that obviously this plan to cancel all the magic went from being the villain's plan to Hazel's plan to stop the villain, and it can't be both. That's where my plot hole lies. I just can't explain it properly. So we have 47 scenes, 58,000-ish words. Not a lot of time to get it done because I've been procrastinating, so let's just do it. Let's just do the thing. Okay, almost immediately there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense in regards to the plot for Abingdon number 5, and it sort of stems from the lack of coherent plot throughout the entirety of the series. But the point of Abingdon number 5 is at the end of book 4, the bad guy wins. You know, he makes his attack and all of the rest of the magical houses are in turmoil and they have to flee their homes and, you know, go to safe houses and stay hidden from the villain, who is something. I don't know the something. Like, at the moment he's taken over the city. That's it. And it's like, okay, but is that really the ultimate villain plan, was just to take over the city? You know, that's not a very good villain plan. And also, this villain is more of a villain against all of the 5 magical houses that we have, including Hazel's, which is Abingdon House. But that's not really personal to Hazel. Like, why is Hazel, the 16-year-old, the one taking charge and doing all of this to try and stop the villain? Like, it's not just her problem. I could argue that for the majority of the rest of the series, books 2, books 3, books 4, she has always been the one, her and her friends, to sort of accidentally come across or get involved with everything that the villain had secretly been planning up until the end of book 4. They were there in book 2 when he was attempting to steal something, and they sort of uncovered that plot, but they didn't know it was connected to something bigger. They were there in book 3 when he was attacking magic users to try to orchestrate something against the different races, and it just happened to be Hazel that sort of stumbled upon this sort of plan that was going on, although again they didn't know that they were connected. And it was Hazel who just happened to be involved with everything that the villain was trying to do to the final little bits of his plan in order to try and take over at the end of book 4. And it's not until near the end of book 4 that they sort of figure out that everything that's been happening over the past few years is all connected. So really, Hazel's like accidentally the antagonist, would you say, for the villain, trying to stop his every move. And it's like, okay, that's great, that's fine. She can accidentally stumble across these things. It's not an issue per se, but why would the villain then take that personally? Like, now she and the other heads of the houses are like, they're trying to stop him. Fine, fair enough. But why is Hazel's plans to try and stop him more important than everyone else's? And why is it Hazel is the one who takes charge? And, you know, her saying, well, I'm the one who knew about it all in the first place, and you guys didn't listen to me because I'm just a kid. Like, that's not an excuse, really. And there's no reason for the villain to personally have a vendetta against Hazel, specifically out of all of the rest of the heads of the houses. You know, is he personally affronted that she discovered part of his plan before it all came to light? Like, she didn't really do anything against it. She just tried to stop him, but he still succeeded. So what is his issue with the 16-year-old girl? Why does he think that she is more important than the rest of them? Why is he so interested in trying to stop her specifically? Like, why does he care? He shouldn't care. There's no reason for him to care, but yet here we are. You know, he's trying to get a hold of and find all of the rest of the heads of the houses that are in hiding, but there's sort of like a personal vendetta he has against Hazel, and there's no reason for there to be. So I think one of my main issues with the entirety of this series is, apart from the fact that the entire villain plot is a mystery, and we know there's something going on in the background, we see that all of it links together. There's nothing solid driving Hazel throughout the entirety of the series. It's not like it's in Percy Jackson, where there's a prophecy that purposely pits the protagonist, which of course is Percy Jackson, against the villain, which is Cronus. Or in HP, where there's a prophecy which pits the protagonist and the antagonist, the villain, against each other. And yeah, sure, in both of those, it's Percy and Harry's job to stop this bad guy from rising from the dead and taking over. But there's nothing like that in Abingdon House. There's a mysterious villain that sort of happens to be doing something in the background while Hazel is doing all of these other things. And yes, the things that are happening, you know, she just somehow happens to be involved with. And sometimes they affect her personally, but it's like not like the antagonist meant for them to affect her personally. It just so happened to affect her personally. And I think what I need to do, which is something I was debating on doing in the first place, was, of course, I need to make the villain more personal to Hazel herself, while also being a threat to the rest of the magical houses. But I'm unsure of how to do that specifically. Like, what is this vendetta specifically about this one 16-year-old child? What is this vendetta specifically against this one magical house, Abingdon House, when there's another 4, all of them in charge of their own territories within the city? And then I also need to think about, how much does Hazel know throughout the book? Like, is it fine for everything to be a mystery until the end of book 4, where suddenly there is a main villain that they have to fight against, rather than a suspected bad guy trying to do something, but they don't know what he's trying to do, so they can't try to stop him from doing what he's doing because they have no idea what it is. They just have bits and pieces of the puzzle. And should I turn it into, we know from the beginning that there is this issue, and Hazel's motivation throughout the entire book is to do her job and lead Abingdon House, but to also stop this person doing what they're doing. Like, we know this antagonist, whether I introduce him at the end of book 1 and make slight changes for that, or whether he's introduced in book 2 as an antagonist that I then have to move forward to continue stopping, rather than making him a surprise villain, which is obvious who the villain is. It's completely obvious who the villain is. Like, I try and make it like a little twist. It's not really a twist at all. Like, you know instantly who it is the second that you meet them at the end of book 4. You just know, which doesn't quite work that well. So you see my conundrum with everything, and the fact that there's so much that I need to change. But it sort of makes it very obvious in book 5, because I vividly remember writing book 5 and thinking to myself, why the hell does the villain care about Hazel? Because nowhere in the other 3 books I've written where this villain is a problem has there ever been any sign that he cares about Hazel specifically. I still wrote it. I think I gave him some backstory, or I gave him a reason why he wanted to take over the houses and take over the city, just so I personally knew. Like, it's not stated or anything, we don't learn this specifically. I thought of it for revisions, but yeah, there's not a lot of depth to the villain, and he's not very present. There's no reason for Hazel to care about stopping him so much, and there's no reason for him to care so much about her. So it's very much a, I completely lost my train of thought now what I was trying to say, but that's my issue that I've spent almost 10 minutes rambling on about at this point before I edit. And I've not even come across that issue in book 5 at the moment. It just suddenly hit me while I was reading. But yeah, so many points of the plot of book 5 don't make sense for any sort of continuity throughout the rest of the previous books. And it's just me trying to muddle together a plot based on sort of what has happened in the past, and it doesn't quite work, I think, basically is what I was trying to say. I think. And now we're going to get into the part of the plot that does make sense. The entirety of the second half of this book is going to need to change, because the second half of this book, before the climax obviously, is Hazel and her friends trying to gather some items in order to put up a barrier that will prevent magic users from using their magic, and that is their plan to defeat the bad guy. But that's the bad guy's plan in book 4. And I don't know, now that plot just feels odd, because all it does is cause a slight twist at the end where we think all is lost, and then magic surprise, no it's not, she succeeded in doing what she needed to do. And it just, I don't know. The issue is there's too much going on, and I haven't properly kept track of it all. So there is Hazel and her friends trying to find an item in order to complete a potion, and this potion is going to stop the bad guy's army, which he has spent the past few books trying to create. And then they need to find these things in order to stop the magic, while the bad guy is trying to do something else, but we don't know what he's trying to do. And then there's another subplot involving another magical creature, which sort of serves to separate Hazel with one of her friends, and then after that happens, nothing else happens with that magical creature or that subplot. It's just like, oh, they're separated, and everything that happened within that subplot has happened now, and yeah, so it's too many ideas and they're not executed very well at all. We are almost at the midpoint. Oh, I'm actually at midpoint. I'm about to start reading the first scene of the midpoint, which is the first bit where we get the, oh, the villain has sort of a vendetta against Hazel that doesn't really need to be there, because now he's there and he's just being smug, like, oh, I knew you'd come back to this place, haha, but why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you care?
I'm having different support. Her name is Cream Puff Cookie. Cream Puff, let's go. And
okay, so we have finished book 5 of Abingdon House. We have officially finished reading the entirety of the series. It is now Tuesday, and we're just now here talking about all of this because I had work. So this is the only time I had. So upon finishing the series Abingdon House, I am vastly disappointed with the result, which I knew I would be. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna sit here and say it is a terrible series, and I did a terrible job with the plot in regards to this series, which is something that I sort of knew already anyway, because I did not plot this series as a whole before I started writing it. I very much wrote book 1 at the end of 2020 for NaNoWriMo, and was just like, yeah, I want to make it into a series, and just decided on 5 books because I thought 5 books, that's a cool length of a series, you know, and sort of then try to fit a plot into 5 books rather than plotting the series to fully understand how many books I would need in order to tell the story that I wanted to tell. And I don't think I was very sure, and I don't think I am still sure, about the story that I want to tell, which is very frustrating. But I wrote book 1, and then I plotted book 2, and then I wrote book 2, and I plotted book 3, and so on and so forth. So because each story was plotted as an individual story, taking what I had written in book 2 and sort of implementing moments of it into book 3, and then plot points from book 3 into book 4, and 4 into 5, without having a clear path that I wanted to follow. I did not have a recipe. I had ingredients that I just shoved together, and I crossed my fingers and I hoped for the best. Obviously it did not turn out well, but these are just 0 drafts. There is nothing I can't fix, hopefully. So obviously my next step is taking all of the notes that I have made in regards to all 5 of these books and the series, and then actually doing the right thing when you're writing a series, and that is to plot out the entirety of the series before you start writing, so you know what you're doing and you know that everything makes sense. But I was just so focused on, I'm going to write all of this series in 1 year, you know. I was focused on the quantity, and completing this challenge that I'd set for myself, rather than ensuring I had a decent series to start revisions from. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like there is nothing good within this series or any of these books that I can't use again. The character arcs, I feel, especially for Hazel and her two friends, works. You can see clear growth from where they started at the beginning of book 1 to the end of book 5. I do want to do something a little bit different with Hazel though. I do want to sort of take her down a darker path or a more negative arc, just for a little bit, because it's not that fun if they have, you know, a 100% good arc, right? She's a kid, she's learning, she's in a very stressful position, lots of anxiety, she is a leader, she has a lot of tough decisions to make, she doesn't have a lot of time to herself. So of course, you know, growing up, going from 12 to 16, I think, over the course of the 5 books, you know, there's going to be some phases that she goes through which, you know, perhaps aren't the best phases. So I want to see if I can try and input something like that into the books as well. There is a moment in book 4 after certain events where she does go a little bit dark, but that's as a reaction to the events that have happened. But I want to explore just a little bit more, you know, the negative sides of kids growing up that you see, you know, which I think will be very, very fun indeed to try and sort out. I think one of the first decisions I will need to make in regards to the plot is if I want to keep the villain a secret until the end of book 4, and instead each book is just focusing on aspects of his plot, but they don't know it's related to the main villain until near the end. Or do I want there to be an obvious main villain very early on in the books, and everything that Hazel does is to stop this person from doing what it is that they want to do? Now, I did realise in book 1 there's a line that I wrote which I'm not going to read because I don't have book 1 up, but there was something one of the other heads of the houses said in regards to Hazel being a new head of this house, that we shouldn't have this child here, not with the divide, not with the push against our territories. So I sort of hinted there, and that line wasn't explored whatsoever. There is a hint there that there is something going on, obviously, that Hazel doesn't know about, that probably no one outside of these heads of houses know about. There is a divide somewhere, but what divide? I think it was a divide between the magic users and the races in the city when I wrote the words, but that's not like that's not something I've decided on. And a push against territories, so maybe there are outside forces, you know, vying against the city that they all live in. But there's something there which I think could be a good base to the main villainous plot of the entire series, and I could maintain what I sort of already have in a series, which is Hazel knows that something is wrong, and she can't prove that there's something wrong, but she knows something is going on based on what's been happening. But none of the other heads of the houses who are decades older than her are listening to her because she's just a child. And I think that sort of note is something that is very worth exploring as well. This whole adults don't listen to children when children are trying to say serious things. At the same time, they will tell a child off for not acting mature, etc, etc. So I think that would also be something very interesting to explore, which will help keep the main vibes of what I currently have, which is Hazel discovering this plot and this plot going on and sort of eventually working out that they all fit together somehow. But it is attributed, in Hazel's point of view, to the big issue that is going on, which the heads already know about. I think that might work. But again, it's, do I have a clear villain in the early stages, or do I keep the clear villain reveal to the later books? Because at the moment, we find out about the villain at the end of book 3. No, we don't. The villain is introduced at the end of book 3, but we don't know they're the villain, but we know they're the villain. Like, it's obvious they're the villain. And then things go crap in book 4. So do I keep it like that, or do I introduce the villain earlier? That's what I need to think about. I didn't think too much about the timeline as I was reading, because I just got confused about what month we were in and how long it had been, and you know, the timeline didn't bother me. It didn't feel like these stories were taking place over a certain amount of months. I think I managed to write down that book 2 starts at some point in January and then finishes in September. Does it feel like this book takes place over 9 months? No. Is it weird that this book takes place over 9 months? When you take into account the actual plot of the book, it is very weird it takes place in with such a long time span. So I'm not going to worry too much about the timeline now. One of the reasons I had such a long timeline was because I wanted to explore Hazel during each year of her life-ish. During the entirety of the series, you know, she starts at 13 and I wanted her to finish at 15, almost finish at 16, almost 17 years old, so we can see her grow. But I also just didn't want a 2-week snapshot of her life as a 14-year-old. You know, I wanted sort of a HP timeline where we see them over the entirety of, you know, 6 months or so. But then it's sort of, do the plots I have for these books work with such a long timeline? Because with such a long timeline for some of the books, it will take away from the urgency of the plot, which it certainly does in book 2. It doesn't all fit together correctly, it doesn't all make sense, but despite how badly all of them are written, they're 0 drafts, so it's okay, it's fine, because they're going to be revised anyway, Sarah. There are some decent foundations that I can take from all 4 of these books. Obviously not including book 1, where the villain isn't sort of mentioned at all, but I think I might have plans to bring book 1 further into the series, as it were, so it's not such a standalone feeling book, which I'm also very, very excited about. But there are enough foundations here, and there's enough plot that I can make the series work. I just need to fit it together properly, make it make sense, and decide on how many plot threads I want within each of the books, so I'm not telling too much at once. Damn, this is going to be a lot of work. How is my tea already cold? What is going on? So that was me rereading the entirety of the Abingdon House series. Let me know down in the comments below, have you ever written a series before? What's your process for rewriting and revising your books? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Good thoughts and happy writing.